Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're digging into sources you shared, and the topic is intensely human motivation. Specifically, that, frustrating gap between what people say motivates them
Right.
and what we often suspect is the real, maybe less flattering truth.
Yeah, the hidden agenda.
Exactly. You've seen this countless times, I'm sure. Someone takes a stand, or maybe they quit a job, launch some big project.
And they give this beautiful, lofty reason.
So noble.
Hmm.
Justice, duty, helping society. You name it. But, if you're paying attention, sometimes you kind of roll your eyes.
Because you suspect the subtext.
Yeah.
Personal gain, maybe ego, maybe just avoiding something difficult.
Right. And the sources today really focus on this paradox. We see people say one thing, do another, yet we still seem to prefer hearing the noble reason.
We respond better to it, almost instinctively.
It's like we're programmed for it. So the big question is, why?
Well, that suspicion you mentioned is pretty universal.
Yeah.
And it leads a lot of people straight to cynicism.
Sure does.
But our mission in this deep dive isn't really about justifying that cynicism. It's not about unmasking the hidden truth just for the sake of it.
Because that doesn't really get you anywhere, does it?
No, it usually just leads to defensiveness, hostility.
Yeah.
The wisdom we're trying to extract here is more about learning how to actively, well, the sources say, arouse or awaken.
Well, waking what?
That inherent desire for goodness, for decency, that actually exists in pretty much everyone.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because, that sounds quite idealistic. When you look at motivation, especially in, say, business or politics, the cynical view often seems, more realistic, maybe even more profitable.
Sure, that's a common assumption.
If we think we know that deep down someone just wants more money or power, why not just appeal directly to that self-interest? Isn't ignoring the real motive just, letting them get away with something? Maybe even manipulation.
That's exactly the conflict the source material dives into first. And yes, the selfish motive wanting money or ease or maybe just vanity might be the true undercurrent.
Right.
But the sources argue pretty strongly that wisdom lies in shifting your perspective, because focusing on that undercurrent, it's almost always counterproductive if your goal is actually positive change.
Or even just cooperation.
Or even just cooperation.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you try to expose someone's ego or their greed, what happens?
They get defensive immediately.
Instantly. They shut down. They certainly won't cooperate. You might feel like you've won some moral high ground in your own head.
But you've lost the actual interaction.
You've lost the negotiation, maybe the relationship, definitely the chance to influence things positively.
So the key insight here isn't that the desire for decency is always the main driver.
Not necessarily the primary force, no.
But it's the aspiration, it's the image they want to project.
Exactly, the desired public self. And that aspiration turns out to be much more influential than maybe the raw underlying need.
Because appealing to the aspiration is like asking them to live up to something.
Yes. You're asking them to live up to the person they want to be seen as. That desire for honor, for trustworthiness, it's an incredibly powerful lever.
It bypasses the defensiveness.
It does. And it enables positive action because now they're acting to protect their reputation, their dignity. And psychologically, that's often a stronger incentive than just, following a rule or avoiding a penalty.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources have these fantastic, almost counterintuitive examples.
Yeah, the anecdotes really bring it home.
They show this principle working even when, logic or contracts seem to point the other way. Let's start with that landlord story. The one with the tenant who wanted out of a lease early.
Right, a clear breach of contract.
Legally, the landlord was owed the money. Full stop. Could have cost the tenant a lot. The transactional move is obvious. Enforce the lease.
Send a legal letter. Demand payment based on the contract. Dry, factual.
But this landlord didn't do that.
No. Instead, the landlord wrote to the tenant and essentially said, look, I understand you need to leave, but, I've always seen you as someone who stands by their word.
Ah, appealing to character.
A person of honor who values agreements. I trust that, given who you are, you wouldn't intentionally break your commitment. Completely sidestepped the legal threat.
Focused entirely on the tenant's identity.
Totally. Appealed directly to the tenant's self-image, their pride. And the result was, genuinely surprising by normal business standards.
What happened?
The tenant stayed, paid the rent in full, right to the end of the original term.
Wow.
So appealing to honor wasn't just, the nicer way to handle it. It was demonstrably more effective than demanding the legal enforcement or threatening penalties.
The landlord leveraged the tenant's own pride.
Exactly.
That is profound. It suggests that sometimes the motivation of dignity can actually trump the motivation of law or even pure logic.
In that case, absolutely.
Okay, but let's scale this up. Does this work when the stakes are bigger, like public, political?
It seems to. The case of President Theodore Roosevelt and the press corps is a great example.
Oh, yeah, the photos of his kids.
Right. He apparently hated the intrusive photography of his children, which is understandable.
Totally.
His personal, maybe selfish reason to object would have been simple. I'm their father, leave my family alone.
But he knew that wouldn't fly.
He probably figured appealing to his personal feelings wouldn't work. Reporters might see it as weakness, maybe self-pity.
So how'd he frame it?
Completely differently. He gathered them and said something like, "Gentlemen, I know you're all committed to the highest standards of journalism, professionalism.
Setting the stage.
These children," he might have gestured, "they need protection. I trust you as men of honor to respect their innocence."
Ah, so he didn't ask them to stop for his sake.
No.
He asked them to stop for the sake of their own professional identity, their duty.
Exactly. Their duty as guardians, maybe protectors of the innocent in a way. That appeal to a higher standard. It apparently struck a chord much stronger than just a personal complaint ever could have.
It leveraged their desire to be seen as ethical, as decent.
He appealed to the ideal version of themselves, the professionals they aspired to be.
And this ties right back to that student's realization in the source material, doesn't it?
How so?
That we often lose arguments or fail in negotiations, maybe not because our facts are wrong, but because we forget to connect with that noble part of the other person. We go for the logical knockout punch.
When we should be aiming for the heart, or at least the sense of honor.
The honorable appeal, yeah. Seems it impacts deeper than just logic or rules.
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism. Why does this work so consistently?
Right, what's the psychology?
The sources basically assert it taps into a fundamental human need, perhaps the deepest core of our social nature, this craving to be seen as decent.
To be recognized as trustworthy, as having honor.
Exactly. Why is that so crucial? Because our identity is so wrapped up in our social standing. Being seen as honorable, that's high social currency.
Makes sense.
Our brains work hard to keep things consistent, how we see ourselves inside, and how we think the world sees us.
So if someone calls you, say, a thief,
your immediate psychological reaction is probably rejection, defensiveness. And sometimes people even react by becoming more difficult, almost leaning into the negative label to protect their ego. It's weird.
but if you flip it, if you approach someone, maybe someone who just messed up, and you say, look, I know you're the most meticulous person on this team.
Why?
Even though this mistake happened, you're activating their identity as meticulous.
Right. Now they almost have to work harder to live up to that noble label you just reminded them of, or bestowed upon them.
So that's the governing law in action, then.
That seems to be it. When we call upon the nobility in others, we awaken this deep, almost hidden motivation. And it's incredibly difficult for them to reject it because it activates that desired self-image we talked about.
Which leads to that foundational principle the sources mention.
The really powerful one, yeah. It almost sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If trusted and supported, people will become more trustworthy and lovable.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
What if the person really is just malicious? Or what if this whole approach is just, well, a more subtle kind of manipulation, using their vanity against them?
That's a really important question. And the sources do try to differentiate this.
How?
They argue it's fundamentally different from manipulation. Manipulation typically is about controlling someone for your own selfish gain, often without caring about the consequences for them.
Okay.
This approach, though, is framed as an active choice to nurture a potential good. You're essentially giving them the permission, the space, maybe even the expectation to be their best self.
So even if their first motive was selfish.
Right, even if it was.
Yeah.
Appealing to the higher motive helps guide their future actions toward a better outcome. You're choosing to focus on the highest common denominator between you, which is usually that shared desire for honor and respect.
Okay, that makes sense. So that shifts us from the philosophy to the practical, everyday wisdom.
Yeah. How do you actually use this?
What does this mean for you, the listener, when you're facing a tough situation right now? How do we take this arousing nobility idea and apply it, maybe with a difficult colleague or a stubborn negotiation?
It really boils down to making a conscious choice about where you put your focus. The sources suggest the wise person doesn't get bogged down trying to dig into the true, maybe dark motive.
Don't waste energy trying to unmask it.
Exactly. Instead, actively choose to feed the good one. Nourish it.
Okay, let's get specific. Say I have a team member chronically late with reports, and my gut feeling, my cynical side, suspects they're just, I don't know, lazy or disorganized.
Okay, common scenario.
The standard approach is, threaten consequences, enforce deadlines rigidly. Get this in or else.
Right, the stick approach.
How does arousing nobility change that specific conversation?
Well, you basically flip the script. You move from accusation to aspiration.
So instead of saying, your reports are late, again, and if this continues...
Yeah, instead of that, you might say something like, hey, I know how much you value reliability
Yeah.
and taking ownership of your work.
Starting with their supposed values.
And honestly, our team's success really rests on people like you who take genuine pride in delivering professional work on time. I'm really relying on your dedication to those professional standards to help us maintain our reputation for excellence.
So you're not even talking directly about the late report right then?
Not primarily. You're talking about their identity as a reliable professional. You're forcing them, gently, to internalize that expectation of honor you've just laid out.
It makes it harder for them to be late next time.
Because then they'd be betraying the very person you just affirmed them to be. It reframes the whole dynamic.
That's a huge shift. Okay, what about negotiation? Say, salary or contract. And you suspect the other side is just pinching pennies, motivated purely by minimizing cost.
The purely transactional mindset.
Yeah. How do you appeal to nobility there? Seems tough.
You could try appealing to the nobility of, say, partnership or foresight. If you think they're only focused on the immediate short-term cost, you frame your request in terms of long-term value, integrity, maybe mutual success. You could say something like, look, I know your organization prides itself on being a fair partner.
Even if you doubt it.
And on making smart investments that guarantee mutual success down the road. I trust that you see the long-term value in structuring this agreement so both parties feel respected and, really positioned for excellence together.
So you're essentially telling them, I expect you to be honorable, not just cheap.
I expect you to be a strategic partner, not just a penny pincher. You're giving them an honorable reason to agree to your terms beyond just the numbers.
Yeah.
And that can be a far stronger motivation than just arguing over data points.
Because the outcome, as the sources suggest, is really dependent on how we observe or maybe frame the other person.
It seems so. If we only look for the bad side, if we expect the worst.
People often live down to those expectations. We feed their defensiveness, confirm their negative behavior.
But if we assume the best, or at least encourage and actively push them towards the good,
they're more likely to try and reach it, to live up to it.
This is presented as the path of the wise, not spending energy judging the purity of someone's heart, but instead sowing seeds of nobility in every interaction.
Which builds trust, changes behavior.
And ultimately just creates more effective and, frankly, more humane interactions all around.
So what does this all mean? Wrapping it up. The core lesson today seems pretty clear.
Yeah, I think so.
When you're faced with a tricky situation involving someone's behavior, choosing to appeal to their highest possible motive, even if you have your doubts, even with that skepticism.
It tends to yield better results. Superior results, the sources claim.
Better than just relying on rules or contracts or logic alone, because it taps into that really deep human desire for self-worth, for honor.
And the ultimate takeaway, the one that resonates personally, is awakening the nobility in others is also awakening the good part in yourself.
That's profound. It's not just about them.
No. You're not only influencing their behavior towards something better, you're actively choosing a more generous, more constructive worldview for yourself.
Which feels better anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider. If this deep craving to be seen as honorable truly is a core part of human nature, what small act of trust could you offer today? To someone specific, a colleague, a family member, maybe even a stranger, a service worker.
Just one small act.
That might awaken that higher self in them. Something that might yield a better result than just enforcing a rule or voicing a criticism or falling back on a cynical assumption.
What identity could you bestow on someone today?
Think about that. And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.